Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I've come to understand that being the good daughter is less of a role and more of a tax, paid quietly, month after month, year after year, with no refunds and certainly no thank yous. It starts so small you don't notice it. You're 6 years old, folding laundry while your little brother is out in the yard, spraying the hose directly into the air and screaming with laughter. You're 11, carrying your mom's grocery bags up the stairs while she tells Matt to rest. Honey, you had such a long day at school. You're 15, and while your friends are getting summer jobs or sleeping in, you're the one driving your mother to her second chiropractor appointment of the week, sitting in the waiting room and pretending this is normal, while Matt is off, finding himself at some music camp he dropped out of 3 days in. That was our family dynamic. Me, Lauren, the steady one, the helper, the daughter who doesn't ask for much. And Matt, my younger brother by 4 years, somehow always under the banner of still figuring it out, even when he was 29 and couch hopping after blowing through another startup job that was never the right fit. Our mother, Nancy, called me her rock. That's what she said at family holidays when people asked what I was up to. Lauren's holding everything together for us, she'd say, half proud and half pitying, like my stability was both a trophy and a curse. Let me be honest, she wasn't a bad mother in the way that gets written into memoirs or screamed about in therapists' offices. She fed us, hugged us, tried in her own way. But she had this subtle, grating way of showing who she prioritized, even when she didn't say it outright. It was all in the small things. How she'd light up when Matt walked into a room, like he was a surprise party she forgot she planned. How she'd bend her own boundaries to accommodate his messes, co-signing a lease he eventually bailed on, bailing him out of debt more than once, calling him sensitive when he lashed out at her, at me, at anyone. And then there was me, who got the opposite. Not anger, not even disappointment, just this bland sort of expectation that I'd manage. No drama, no questions, no real concern. Just constant, quiet need. Someone had to schedule her eye appointments. Someone had to clean out the garage after Dad died. Someone had to remember that the car needed an oil change. That someone was me. I used to think it made me special. I clung to that like a lifeboat, that I was the one who could be counted on, the one who showed up. I thought that meant I mattered more. But over time, I started to realize that being dependable didn't mean being loved. It meant being used without anyone noticing they were doing it. 2 years ago, when I was promoted to project manager at my firm, I told Mom during a lunch I had to leave work early for. She smiled and said, "That's great, honey," and then asked if I could drive her to her hair appointment that Saturday. No toast, no celebration, just a slot filled in her weekly to-do list. And when Matt got a part-time DJ gig that lasted 3 months, she called everyone she knew, told them how proud she was of his creativity. That's the thing about being the strong one. Nobody checks to see if you're okay. They just assume you are because you always have been. And if you start to crack, if you dare to ask for space, you're acting different or being cold. Last fall, Mom twisted her ankle in the backyard, and I drove over in the middle of my workday to help her up the stairs, make her lunch, and ice her foot. Matt sent a text with a thumbs-up emoji and didn't call for 3 days. When he finally did, she cooed into the phone like he was some kind of war hero. Meanwhile, I was cleaning out the fridge and throwing out expired yogurt from 2020. You might be wondering why I stayed. Why I didn't pull back, say no, set boundaries. The truth? I didn't know how. You spend enough years being trained to believe that your value comes from being useful, and you start to think any other way of existing is selfish. I told myself she needed me, that she was aging, that Matt couldn't be trusted, that I was the only thing standing between her and chaos. But deep down, I think I stayed because I was still hoping she'd notice, hoping one day she'd sit me down and say, "You've done enough, Lauren. You can rest now." That moment never came. What did come was a Tuesday evening in February, right around 6:30. I was washing dishes in the kitchen, hands wet, neck stiff, the same headache I always got from staring at spreadsheets too long. Mom called. She sounded chipper, something that always made me nervous. She started talking about planning a trip, something exciting, something big. I wiped my hands on a towel, leaned on the counter, waiting for the ask, figuring I'd be coordinating flights, booking hotels, the usual drill. But then she said it. "We're planning a trip, but you're probably too busy." I went quiet. I didn't even ask who "we" was. I didn't have to. The silence on the line stretched a few seconds longer than it should have, and then she added, "Matt and I have been talking about doing something just us, for fun. He really needs a break. And I know you're swamped at work." Swamped. Like a wet rag tossed into a bucket. That's what I was to her, overloaded, overused, just something functional. I said, "Sure, yeah, I probably am," and I smiled into the phone because that's what I always did. But something inside me started to tear. Not like a scream or a crash. More like a quiet, invisible seam coming undone. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad or angry or even surprised. I just felt done. I didn't ask when they were leaving or where they were going because part of me knew that asking meant inviting pain, and frankly, I'd had enough slow-burning pain to last me a lifetime. I just told her I was busy, gave the usual polite noise in my voice, the practice tone that says, "I'm fine with this," even when I wasn't sure what this even was. I hung up the phone, tossed it face down on the kitchen counter, and went back to my cold takeout, chewing through bitterness with every bite like it was something I could swallow. The thing about betrayal is that it's rarely theatrical. Most of the time, it walks in dressed like a normal day. That week passed without much incident, at least on the surface. I went to work, managed meetings, rescheduled dentist appointments, fixed the stupid kitchen drawer that kept sticking, and didn't tell anyone how much it rattled me that they were planning something big, and I was never even asked if I wanted to go. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even considered. And yet, I was supposed to be okay with that, like always. On Friday, I saw Mom's car wasn't in the driveway. I figured they'd left. I told myself I was fine. I told myself that it wasn't a big deal, that maybe it was better this way. Let them have their little adventure. I had things to do. Reports to finish. Groceries to buy. I told myself the same lie 100 women before me have told themselves, that being left out is better than being dragged along out of obligation. 2 weeks passed. The house was quiet in that particular way that creeps into your bones. I didn't talk to anyone about what I was feeling, mostly because I couldn't explain it without sounding petty. What was I supposed to say? That my mother and brother took a vacation without me and it made me feel like I didn't exist? That I kept checking my phone for a text that never came, even though I pretended I didn't care? And then, on a random Tuesday, while scrolling Instagram during my lunch break at work, it happened. There they were, under a glowing African sky, smiling like a toothpaste commercial. My mother and Matt, standing under an acacia tree in the middle of a wildlife preserve in Kenya. Behind them, giraffes, golden light, wide open air that smelled like freedom and money. Mom had on her floppy sun hat, the one she only wore when she wanted to feel expensive. Matt was in a linen shirt, holding a glass of wine like he was some kind of travel influencer. And the caption? "Family time we'll never forget." I stared at that photo for a long, long time. Something in me went completely still. Not angry. Not sad. Just gone. Like someone flipped a breaker inside me and the lights went out for good. I kept scrolling, not sure what I was looking for, but more photos followed, sundowners on a deck overlooking elephants, spa massages with flower petals, grilled seafood at a private beach, and of course, that signature photo of Matt posing with a Maasai warrior, grinning like he discovered a new continent. My hand trembled as I held my sandwich, and I remember thinking, this can't be real. But it was. It absolutely was. They flew business class. $10,000 each, so 20 total. Maybe more. Probably around 30. That line played in my head on repeat, Not because I cared about the money, though. Let's be real, it hurt, but because of what it meant. They had planned it. They had saved. They had dreamed. They had packed their bags and booked the safari and coordinated outfits and said family time with their whole damn chest, and never once thought that family might include me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't text anyone or pour a glass of wine or make a dramatic scene. I just sat in my car in the driveway, engine running, listening to the low hum of the heater while staring at the dark windows of the house that I no longer believed was mine. It was like something calcified in my chest. Not rage. Not pain. Just the sharp, bitter taste of final understanding. I realized then that they didn't think I needed anything, not time, not love, not inclusion, because I'd spent my entire life pretending I didn't. When I stepped into the house, I looked around with new eyes. This wasn't a home. It was a waiting room for other people's comfort. My name was on the lease, but my presence had been erased. I moved through the room slowly, cataloging what was mine and what I could leave behind. And then I did the one thing I knew would speak louder than anything I could ever say. I changed the locks. I stood there with the new keys in my palm, cold metal pressing against my skin like a confession. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't warn them. I just did it. Quiet. Final. Clean. The next morning, I unplugged the landline phone my mom still used just in case, deleted her from my favorites, and blocked Matt on Instagram. Not forever, just long enough for the silence to settle in. Long enough for them to realize that I wasn't coming back. That I wasn't going to knock on the door with some sad face and ask why they left me out. No. That version of me had gone extinct somewhere between the giraffes and the wine glasses. And when they came back, sun-kissed and satisfied, they would find a house that no longer recognized them. A front door that didn't open. A daughter who had finally stopped asking to be seen. Let them knock. Let them wonder. The sound the lock made when it clicked into place was quieter than I expected, just a little metallic snip like the end of a sentence no one wanted to finish, but I stood there in the entryway of the house for a long time after it was done. Keys dangling from my fingers, the air suddenly feeling too still. It wasn't like in movies, no dramatic music, no single tear sliding down a cheek, just the kind of silence that wraps around your ribs and tells you that the moment has already passed and you're already someone else now. I didn't pack in a frenzy, didn't slam drawers or stomp around or curse the heavens. I moved slow and deliberate, like I was untangling myself from something sticky that had been there for so long I'd almost mistaken it for part of me. I took only what was mine, my clothes, my books, my laptop, and a box of old photos that still felt like they belonged to me, not to us. Everything else I left behind. The furniture I had paid half for but never got to choose. The silverware set Mom insisted we keep because it was from the wedding registry, Lauren. Don't you remember? Even though it felt like it belonged to a couple I'd never met. The walls didn't have much on them anymore, but I took down the one framed photo of the three of us in front of the Grand Canyon, me awkward and gangly in middle school, holding Matt's hand while Mom beamed like she was auditioning for a toothpaste ad. I stared at it for a moment, remembering how hot it was that day and how I'd gotten sick in the car because Mom insisted we drive 8 hours straight with no stops, saying, "Let's just power through. We'll be there before dark." I put it back in the box, not because I wanted to keep it, but because it didn't feel right to leave it behind. Some memories deserve to be buried, but not abandoned. The place I'd found was a 2-bedroom rental near Lake Michigan, about 3 hours north of the city, with old hardwood floors and a fireplace that didn't work but looked good in pictures. I had stumbled across it one night while scrolling through listings, not even really searching, just sort of drifting in that way you do when your body's still anchored, but your mind is already somewhere else. The listing said private and quiet with a view, and that was enough. I emailed the landlord, paid the deposit online, and made the arrangements without telling a soul. It took me one night to box my life and one morning to load it into the back of a borrowed SUV from a friend at work who didn't ask questions. I drove with the windows down, letting the cold air slap me awake because I didn't want music or podcasts or distractions. I wanted to hear myself think. Or maybe I didn't. I'm not even sure anymore. The drive north was long and gray, the kind of Midwest late winter that looks like everything has been dipped in dishwater. I passed fields that seemed like they hadn't changed in 50 years, farmhouses with broken shutters, and old gas stations with faded signs. No one called. No one knew I was gone. They were still on their little safari dream, probably toasting champagne in the back of a private jeep while a guide pointed out zebras like they were vacationing royalty instead of two people who'd built a family on one daughter's silence and another son's need. I pulled into the new driveway just before sunset. The lake was visible through bare trees, silver and choppy and cold-looking, like it didn't want to be touched. I carried the boxes inside one by one, no rush, no audience, just the rhythmic scrape of cardboard against my jeans and the steady drum of my own breath. It wasn't beautiful, not yet, but it was mine. No floral couches. No mom-shaped indentations in the living room chair. No weird smell of stale perfume mixed with guilt. Back at the old house, before I left, I had reset the Wi-Fi router, wiped the guest passwords, and unplugged the smart thermostat. I canceled the power bill and let the fridge run empty. I didn't do it out of malice. I did it because it felt like closing tabs in a browser I never wanted to open again. I left the keys in an envelope inside the drawer of the kitchen island, not labeled, not explained. They could break a window if they had to, or call a locksmith, or just stand there with their hands in their pockets and wonder what they missed. I didn't forward my mail. I didn't leave a note. I didn't give a new number. I deleted my mother's contact that night, sitting on the floor of the new place with my back against the wall, legs stretched out in front of me like I was afraid the floor might suddenly disappear. Her name vanished from my favorites, from my recent calls, from the emergency contact list I'd never bothered to update. And here's the part one didn't expect, the part that hit harder than anything else. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to be okay. I wasn't asking for someone to notice I was tired. I wasn't doing the right thing just so I wouldn't be the bad guy. I was just gone. And that silence? It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The plane touched down at O'Hare sometime just after 6 in the evening, its wheels screaming slightly against the wet runway, the final punctuation to 2 sun-soaked weeks of curated adventure, boutique hotels, and carefully timed photo ops. Nancy leaned back in her seat with the vague discomfort of someone who'd slept wrong on an overnight flight and was too proud to admit it, while Matt scrolled through his camera roll, stopping on a photo of himself standing smug beside a giraffe and chuckling in that self-satisfied way he always did when he thought he looked particularly cool. Outside, the sky was gray and heavy, the typical slap-in-the-face welcome that Midwest March weather loved to give after any warm escape. Inside the terminal, they moved slowly, a little disoriented from the jet lag, their bodies dragging behind their still sparkling memories. Matt joked that the trip felt like a dream, and Mom said it was exactly what they both needed, something pure, something simple, something that brought them back together. Neither of them mentioned Lauren. Not once. They collected their bags, expensive luggage with little safari stickers they'd insisted on buying at a gift shop just outside Nairobi, and made their way to the car Matt had left in long-term parking. The ride home was quiet at first, the tired silence of two people who'd spent too much time together and were now crashing back into reality. But as they pulled into the neighborhood, past the sleepy houses and the same mailboxes they'd driven by 100 times before, there was a gentle excitement building beneath the fatigue, like the final page of a story they thought they knew the ending to. Matt carried Mom's suitcase to the porch while she fumbled for her keys, patting the front pocket of her bag like the smooth twist of metal might jump into her hand. She inserted the key, turned it, and nothing happened. She blinked. Matt stood behind her, arms crossed, watching. Nancy tried again, jiggling the key, then pulling the handle harder, as if force might suddenly rewrite reality. The lock didn't budge. The door didn't even pretend to give. She pulled the key out, looked at it, then turned to Matt with a confused half-smile that was already beginning to crack. Maybe she changed the lock for some reason? Matt offered, though even he didn't sound sure, and the moment those words left his mouth, he knew they didn't make sense. Nancy didn't respond. She walked around the side of the house, stepping through the slush-streaked grass, her shoes soaking through as she tried the back door. Same result. Then the garage. Still nothing. Every single entrance had been sealed. By the time she reached the front porch again, her sunburned skin had turned a blotchy shade of pink, not from heat, but from the slow blooming of worry that starts in the gut and climbs. She pulled out her phone, tapped Lauren's name with trembling fingers, and lifted the phone to her ear. It rang once, then twice, then straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. Matt, now visibly less amused, dropped the suitcase and said, maybe she left a note. Like on the mailbox or something. They both looked. There was nothing. No post-it, no handwritten message, no clever goodbye. Just the metal coldness of a box filled with advertisements and a single envelope addressed to resident. Matt pulled out his own phone, opened Instagram, and checked for signs of life. Lauren's profile was still there, but there were no new posts, no stories, no recent activity. He DM'd her something simple, hey, we're home. Can you call us? And stared at the screen like he expected it to come alive. Nancy sat down on the top step, suddenly feeling every bit of her 61 years, and stared at the front door like it might blink open if she waited long enough. The silence was enormous. The windows reflected their own tired faces back at them like strangers. The porch light didn't flicker on, even as the dusk began to settle. For the first time in her life, Nancy realized she didn't know her daughter anymore. Not the version that made meals or organized bills or came over without asking. Not the girl who'd once cried after missing a school bus and clung to her mother like she was the only solid thing in the world. That version had gone somewhere else. Quietly, decisively, irrevocably. Nancy stood back up, wiped her hands on her jeans, and without a word, dialed the local non-emergency police line. When the operator answered, Nancy's voice was polite but tight around the edges, trying to hold its shape. Hi, I just got home from a trip, and, well, my daughter's not here, and the locks have been changed, and I'm not sure what's going on. The operator paused, then asked if there was any sign of forced entry. There wasn't. Asked if Nancy had ownership of the house. She didn't. The lease legally was in Lauren's name. Nancy hung up a few minutes later with nothing more than a number for a locksmith and the quiet implication that no crime had been committed. No laws had been broken. Just something deeper. Something unspoken. Matt looked at her and said, so what now? Nancy didn't have an answer. And inside the house, just past the locked door, just beyond the window's glare, the silence remained. Not cold, not cruel, just final. The lake outside my window didn't sparkle like it did in postcards, didn't invite me to splash around or find peace in its reflection, but it moved with this slow, deliberate rhythm that made me feel something closer to clarity than I'd felt in years. Each wave slid toward shore and then pulled back, whispering secrets I didn't need to understand, only feel. I sat on the wooden steps of the back deck most evenings now, sometimes with tea, sometimes with nothing but a blanket and the sound of the world not asking me to be anyone. I didn't cry when I left. Not on the drive up here. Not when I unpacked the last box. Not even the first time I stood in the middle of my new kitchen and realized no one would be calling me to fix their printer, or to pick up prescriptions, or to just swing by real quick because Matt had flaked again. I didn't smile either. There wasn't any big emotion waiting at the finish line. No relief party. No internal applause. Just breath. Clean breath. Like I'd been underwater too long and didn't realize I was drowning until I stood up and remembered what air felt like. Most people think escape is dramatic, filled with slammed doors and angry exits, but real freedom, The kind that truly matters is often quiet. It doesn't announce itself or arrive with fire. It slips in through the back, packs your things when no one's watching, and leaves you standing in an unfamiliar room feeling nothing and everything at once. I didn't leave with rage. I left with resolve. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I was done auditioning. Matt texted once. A single line. Can we talk? No punctuation. No question mark. Just that hollow reach across a canyon he'd helped dig and now wanted to cross without building a bridge. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because answering would have meant stepping back into the version of me they expected, the fixer, the explainer, the one who smoothed over the mess other people made. I had nothing to fix anymore. A few days later, a screenshot landed in my inbox from a mutual friend I hadn't spoken to in months. It was a Facebook post from Mom. She'd shared an old photo of us at some park picnic when I was maybe 9, my arms around Matt, her in the background holding a plate of food and looking distracted. The caption read, "If anyone's seen Lauren, please let her know we just want to talk. We're worried. We love you." The comments were immediate and messy. Distant cousins saying how strange it was. Church friends chiming in with prayers. A woman I didn't recognize posted, "She'll come around. Daughters always do." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the kind of thing people say when they don't know a damn thing about what actually goes on behind closed doors. They didn't understand that I wasn't lost. I wasn't hiding. I didn't need rescuing or reaching out. I had simply removed myself. And it was astonishing to watch how fast people assumed that disappearance meant danger, not choice. As if a woman leaving without fanfare couldn't possibly mean she'd simply had enough. As if silence was synonymous with crisis. But silence, I've learned, is its own kind of language. Every time I looked around this new space, this half-furnished rental with creaky floors and bad lighting, I didn't see what I'd left behind. I saw what I hadn't lost. Peace. Time. My own voice. The ability to sit still without waiting for the next demand, without rehearsing excuses or weighing obligations or scanning my texts for some passive-aggressive reminder that love in my family was always tied to labor. It's funny, isn't it? That I spent years begging for my mother to see me, and now, when she finally really is, it's through a locked door and a vanished daughter. That version of me who used to ache for her approval, who spent holidays crafting the perfect gift, who rearranged meetings to make dentist appointments, who swallowed her hurt like pills and called it maturity, that version died the day I saw that photo. Not because of what they did, but because of what it proved. I had always been optional. Now I was gone. Not in the dramatic way people vanish, with cut hair and new names and burner phones. No, I was gone in the most painful way of all. I had simply chosen not to be part of the story anymore. I turned the page and stopped reading. I don't know what they tell people now. Probably some soft lie about me needing time or going through something. Maybe they say I'm traveling. Or that I met someone. The truth would be harder to explain. The truth doesn't fit neatly into a social media post. Because the truth is, I didn't disappear because I was lost. I disappeared because I was finally found. And I never left a note because there was nothing left to say. You don't explain silence. You earn it.